American nuclear warheads. These are the ones Russia fears most, and these are the ones that can effectively stop the Kremlin's imperial ambitions. That's why Polish President Andrzej Duda, in an interview with the prestigious British newspaper The Financial Times, suggested that American nuclear weapons be deployed on Polish soil. I think it would be safer if these weapons were already here. The Russians did not ask anyone's permission, announcing that they would move tactical nuclear weapons to Belarus.
Bezpieczeństwo Polski jest najważniejsze. Kiedy mówimy o
Polish security is paramount, and when we talk about the nuclear umbrella stretched over Poland, we are thinking about strengthening Polish security. And so what the President said to the Financial Times is appropriate. Andrzej Duda stressed in an interview with the Financial Times that he was raising the topic in response to the Russian barbarism across Poland's eastern border. According to the President, it is high time to start such talks and to consider such decisions. It is logical that since NATO's borders moved eastward in 1999, 26 years later, there should also be a shift of NATO's infrastructure eastward. To me, this is obvious.
Jest to bardzo dobry pomysł. Parasol nuklearny jest bardzo ważny.
This is a very good idea. One might say the nuclear umbrella is a very important element of deterrence. Russia understands such steps because Russia only knows the argument of force, so only such steps raise the defense potential, the deterrence potential, when it comes to our security. US nuclear weapons were also the subject of the President's conversation with General Keith Kellogg, Donald Trump's special envoy for Russia and Ukraine, when he visited the presidential palace in mid-February. It is apparent that there is no coincidence in this because the President may have spoken behind the scenes with the current US administration on this issue, just as he spoke with the previous one. On the other hand, given the fact that he has made a public statement, it is likely he intends to start such an open public debate on whether to move the nuclear weapons stored by the United States in several European countries to Poland, for example. In Europe, the United States stores nuclear weapons at 5 military bases. In Belgium, Germany, the Netherlands, and 2 in Italy. In all of these places, there are 20 B-61 nuclear bombs, intended for F-16 fighters or Tornado-type aircraft. Their use must be authorized by Washington every time. The 6th base is in Turkey, but in the Asian part of the country. Polish President Andrzej Duda believes that the nuclear warhead should be moved closer to the borders with Russia, so as to remind Moscow of American military potential. Russia as a country I still consider dangerous, still with imperial inclinations when it comes to the whole thought construct of Putin and his entourage. And there is no joke here. All the more so because Poland's ruling December 13th coalition, headed by Prime Minister Donald Tusk, is most likely to put our security in the hands of the Germans or the French, and that can't end well. That's why Andrzej Duda's proposal is not to Donald Tusk's liking.
Bardzo by mi zależało I to nie jest, czy to jest taka dla mnie dość oczywista.
It is very important to me, and it is clearly the Polish state's raison d'etre, that we formulate certain expectations when we do it in public, when we are sure or have reason to be convinced that such appeals will be held and that the addressee, in this case the United States administration, President Trump, is prepared to respond positively. Civic coalition politicians led by the Prime Minister are betting on the nuclear umbrella proposed by Emmanuel Macron. Betting on France or Germany, God forbid, when it comes to Polish security is a total misunderstanding. Both France and Germany have collaborated and collaborate all the time, by the way, with an aggressive imperial Russia. This is not the first time Andrzej Duda wants to place American nuclear weapons in Poland. In 2022, he discussed the issue with the Joe Biden administration. It was about Poland joining the nuclear sharing program, i.e. sharing nuclear weapons within NATO. But the president is not crossing out the Paris proposal, although it is meant to be complementary. There is a question of whether we should be part of such US nuclear protection programs as nuclear sharing or the French nuclear umbrella mentioned by President Macron. And here, as President of Poland, I say, why not? Both projects are worthy of attention. The American one could be part of a broader, global puzzle of which Poland could become the subject and not an object. We are certainly closer than ever given the international situation, but look at it a little more widely. President Andrzej Duda has been conducting a consistent policy for these 10 years, a consistent security policy and a consistent policy of building an alliance with the United States. We are a reliable partner. We are shown as an example in connection with this, and we have very good cards to talk about such a serious issue as nuclear sharing. This time must be used because the fate of the new security architecture in Europe is at stake, and Poland can be an important part of it. Moscow has agreed to a 30-day ceasefire, but is making new demands. An advisor to the Russian dictator said the halt in fighting is time for a regrouping of Ukrainian forces, which Russia cannot accept. In the background, the Kremlin is holding talks with Beijing and Minsk. This may be related to warnings coming from the White House. For the first time in uniform, for the first time in a frontline area in the Kursk region, the Russian war criminal and dictator has officially announced that he does not intend to respect the Geneva Convention on Prisoners of War. The fate of the Kursk region is now a foregone conclusion. Ukrainian forces have made a retreat from Russian territory. In recent weeks, the Kremlin has thrown a huge force to that front, anticipating the possible start of ceasefire talks. After Kiev had agreed and accepted the details, they were discussed in Moscow. The US administration's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, arrived in Russia on an almost impossible mission. Even before the meeting, it was clear that the Russians would not agree to a ceasefire unconditionally. The temporary ceasefire, what does it give us? It gives us nothing. It only gives the Ukrainians an opportunity to regroup, gain strength, and continue doing the same. On top of that, according to unofficial information, the Kremlin was to present a list of demands with the removal of President Zelensky and the withdrawal of Ukrainian troops from Donbass and Luhansk at the top. So far, it is not known whether such conditions were discussed with Washington's envoy. We agree with the proposals to cease hostilities, but we proceed from the fact that this cessation should be such that it would lead to a long-term peace and would eliminate the original causes of the crisis. Does this mean agreement? For now, it's unclear. The ball seems to be back in the United States court. Donald Trump has stated unequivocally that Moscow's failure to accept the ceasefire plan will mean increased US support for Ukraine and a continuation of the fighting, in addition to which the White House may also hit Russian interests directly.
I can do things financially that would be very bad for Russia. I don't want to do that because I want to get peace. I want to see peace, and we'll see. But in a financial sense, yeah, we could do things very bad for Russia. It would be devastating for Russia.
According to unofficial information, Donald Trump is to halt Russian oil sales to the European Union. The US Treasury is to lift an exception to sanctions on Russian banks, clearing European payments for such transactions. This was to determine the Russians' final agreement to the American ceasefire proposal. Because today in Europe, no one can buy Russian oil any longer. In the background, Moscow is holding talks with China and Belarus, a move that could be ahead of a possible American strike. Europe's involvement in the mission in Ukraine is also important, as this affects Kiev's position in talks with Washington and the Kremlin.
The UK and France are jointly leading work on plans to drive the push for peace and drive the arrangements for security guarantees for Ukraine. We're doing this work together. We're cooperating closely with partner nations, and we're looking to build a coalition of the willing from Europe and beyond.
Moscow, in a now familiar hysterical tone, has just announced that the incursion of any army into Ukrainian territory will mean that the country will join the war with full consequences. However, the statement forgot to add anything about North Korea, China, Iran and Belarus as active Moscow-supporting participants in the attack on Ukraine.
The way that the European Union is managed, geopolitically and otherwise, leaves much to be desired. With the Three Seas Initiative, a project aimed at integrating Central and Eastern European countries with each other, an alternative to the European Union, or does a strong Central Europe not hinder the EU? This decade of the Three Seas Initiative saw many strategic infrastructure projects. Investments in, among other things, the construction of shared roads have integrated Eastern Europe like never before. Seeing the huge potential in the center and east of Europe, we knew that our strength would come from dynamic economic development, but what had to be broken down at the time were barriers. The Three Seas Initiative was supposed to end the division of Europe into Eastern and Western, which followed the line of the old Iron Curtain. Central Europe is linked by a common, painful history, years of communism and the reign of the Soviet Union. We, Poland, joined the European Union, but also countries like the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary joined later. We were economically positioned differently. Our region is developing the fastest, as former Prime Minister Morawiecki said today, President Duda said yesterday, and we are developing the most rapidly not only in Europe, but also in the world. The Three Seas Initiative is an initiative bringing together 13 Central European countries located between the Baltic, Adriatic, and Black Seas, as well as strategic partners, the European Union, the United States, Japan, and partner regions from Ukraine and Moldova. It's a community that shows that it is possible to strengthen cooperation within EU structures. The Three Seas region is one of the fastest growing regions in the world, with a projected 35% GDP growth by 2030. Everyone is moving somewhat sluggishly, regardless of the external environment. They are all somewhat detached from reality. This is what our dear Europe is like today. Why are individual countries inside the European Union better able to assess their needs than officials in Brussels? This bloc of Three Seas countries from north to south, cooperating closely economically and militarily, is sorely needed by the European Union. But what turns out is that the EU is looking at this project as if it were some kind of competitor, because it is used to the dominance of Germany and France. Many initiatives, like Via Carpathia, are already visible to the naked eye. They are valued because they connect the north of Europe with the south, economically, for tourism, and for trade. When an Italian comes to Poland today, he is amazed by how modern Polish infrastructure is, because it is being built new. Because a strong Central Europe is much more than economic cooperation. These are countries that are built on the foundations of Christian faith, which Western Europe is moving away from. In short, the Three Seas Initiative can give more strength to the countries of Western Europe. The Three Seas Local Government Congress in Lublin is behind us. The 10th summit of the Three Seas Initiative is scheduled for April 28, 2025 in Warsaw. The Polish president expressed hope that the accompanying political talks and economic forum will result in new investments and opportunities for the economy of Poland and the entire Three Seas region. We want to inspire the government to take care of our initiatives.
The Saudis are challenging the architects of construction and the forces of nature to build the world's tallest building, the first such structure to be over 1 kilometer high. They are doing it in a place with sand, extreme temperatures, and where there are strong winds blowing from the Red Sea. Jeddah Tower is expected to amaze the whole world and become a landmark of the new Saudi Arabia. At nearly 170 floors, there will be a hotel, apartments, offices, and the highest observation deck in the world, more than 660 meters above the ground. The construction of this giant began in 2013. However, the work was quickly halted due to a corruption scandal and later the COVID-19 pandemic. Only over a year ago, the investment resumed. Work is scheduled to be completed by the end of this decade. This is a real challenge for architects and engineers. They have to face a desert climate, strong winds, and scorching sun. But the results are expected to be spectacular. The building will feature the world's longest elevator shaft, as long as 660 meters. It better be reliable, because climbing to the top floor by stairs could take up to 5 hours. The construction of Jeddah Tower is just one of several points of the ambitious plan and strategy of Saudi Vision 2030. The idea on the Red Sea coast is to attract new investment, technology, and tourists. The country, which until now lived mainly from oil, is now investing in tourism, entertainment, new technologies, and renewable energy sources. In addition to Jeddah Tower, a mega project, the futuristic city of Neom, is being built. The ambitious plans are expected to transform the economy, but also affect a society that is still regarded as one of the most closed and conservative in the world. From Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, Rafał Stańczyk, TV Republika.